Hello guys, and welcome to this hands-on session on conditional processing. So during this session I'll be taking you through basically what we saw during our previous lecture. Okay, so if you start off with a new program, let's rename this and let's call it if subsetting basically, so just to illustrate the if statement that we've just covered. So let's start off with the data step. And say, John_values. So the pretty much the example that we saw in the last lecture. So let's read these customer visits all that we left or that we sort of went through during the previous lecture. So set customer underscore visits underscore all, and now we just go if customer equals, and then you open the commas, John, I got it wrong there, so we had John, and then you just run. Okay, so this is really the simplest if subsetting. Okay, well basically what will happen is you're just going to get a new data set, John underscore values, containing the observations for which the customer equals John. Okay, so let's print this, run it, and there we go, get some results which basically relate to John. So you can see that he shopped across all 4 stores. Okay, so that's an option. So now if we start another code, and so new program, and let's call this if else example. Okay, so what we want to do here is illustrate the if else if approach to classing variables. So let's just go class spenders, import or set the customer visits all data set. Then let's define via the length statement the spender underscore type variable, which is basically the class of the type of spender that customer is. Let's allocate 15 bytes for it via the length statement, and then just go if spend LE, which basically means less or equal to 10, and not missing, and then within brackets spend, to basically say that do not consider, obviously if it's not missing, then spender underscore type equals small spender. Okay, so that's basically a type of spender that we've defined if they spend less than 10 euros or $10. Now else if spend is less than or greater than 10 and less than 40, then we want to say that the spender type equals average underscore spender. Okay, so that's basically telling you that anyone that's got a spend value between 10 and 40, we want to class it as an average spender. And then else, which to wrap up the logic, spender type equals big spender. The reason we don't need to specify any other condition is because basically we're saying that anything that or any customer that will spend more than 40 will be classed as a big spender, and that's just basically due to this construct here, where we're classing the 2 earlier values or smaller values, and then leaving everything else, just leaving it to be classed as a big spender. We then print that, and there you go. As a result, you see that for each customer, according to their spend, they get classed as a spender type. So you see that Anne, for example, she spent 91.85, so she gets classed as a big spender. Okay. So now if you start a new code where if you just rename that to if in example, just to illustrate the in operator. So if we just go and start off by creating a data step, and we can say data gender underscore values set customer visits underscore all. Then with the length statement, define the gender variable, which will be 6 in length, and then the gender2 variable, which will be 1. And we'll use this to do it in 2 different ways. So we'll create 2 different variables because we'll be doing it 2 different ways. Now, if we then go if customer in, and we open the brackets, in between brackets we get the 2 strings, so Mary or and Anne, then we basically want the gender variable to take on the value of female. Okay. We then can go and say else if the customer variable belongs to any of the cases, John or Steve, then we want the gender to take up the value of male. Okay. Else the gender equals unknown, or just put it another, just leave it as unknown. Okay. So this is something that I do advise you to do, guys, because by excluding or by going through all the logical conditions that you might encounter and then leaving the last one which you do not expect to encounter as, say, also in that logic, you'll be able to see if there's any issues then later by using, say, a proc frac, which we'll cover later on. Okay. Now the second way of doing this is by using if customer equals Mary or customer equals Anne, then gender equals F, female. Then the second statement, if customer equals John or customer equals Steve, then gender equals M for male. Okay, so this is an alternative to basically getting to the same result, but it's less efficient because the if and the else if construct is more efficient generally than just the if statements. Okay, so if we then just print that, so print the gender underscore values data set, we'll see that these 2 variables, so the gender and the gender2, should have been created, and we should have the good values for those variables. Okay, and that's what we got basically. So you can see there the gender and the gender2 variables. If the customer is a male, those will be female or F. If they're male, they'll be male or M. Okay, so now a new program. If we just go new program, I'll illustrate, or we go through an example to illustrate the use of the select statement. Okay, so let's pick up on the gender scenario. So if you just go gender underscore values underscore S for select, if we then just do set customer underscore visits all, so pretty much the same, via the length statement specify the gender variable, and then just use the select statement, and to do this you just go select and then the variable to which you're applying the condition, close off that statement, and then I do recommend you to ident your code, and you can just go when and basically Mary or Anne, the 2 values for female, you can just add then the gender should be a female. Okay, and otherwise, okay, all other conditions, the gender is male. Okay, we then end it with an end statement, hit run statement, and we can just print that to make sure that we got similar results. So if we just go proc print gender values underscore S, and then just go title gender values with select, run, hit run, And there you go. You can see that the gender variable was created and it's taking up the right value, so that Anne's a female, John's a male, and what have you. Also recommend you guys to go through the log to make sure that all went well. Really, again, just reiterating the importance of that log. So if you now create a new code, a new program, I will be taking you through, some examples around, Boolean logic. So let's start off by writing out, the data step. So Boolean underscore example. We can then just read in some data from the customer underscore visits underscore all. We need to, or we can use the length statement to specify that spender type has longer length. And then we can start off with our Boolean logic. So we can go if spend greater than 40 and customer, and then this inside some brackets, equals John or customer equals Steve. Okay, then you can go that then the spender type equals male big spenders. Okay, so note the example of using logic there. So and or, and the or taking precedence over the and because it's within brackets. Okay, and then else spender type equals not considered. Okay, just run that, proc print that, so that we get some results. Document it with the title statement. Just go run, and we should have some results. So there you go. So spender type variable, you can see there that Steve has, obeys those conditions, so he's a male big spender. All the others aren't. Okay, so now if you just go from new code, and I'll show you the where clause. So in order to do this, let's create a data set called females only. Let's read in the gender values S data set. Okay. And now, remember I told you that the where statement, you can actually use it inside the within a set statement, making it very efficient because you actually don't need to read those. So you can do where equals gender equals female. Just then proc print this, and you'll see that you only get values that are related to female customers. Okay. Now, also another alternative is inside a proc, which is something that the if statement doesn't allow you to do. If you just go proc print and then where the gender equals female. Okay. You do this and then run it, and there you go. You see that results are quite similar, and that's pretty much it.